harmonic fingerprint. Here's the overtones. We talked about this in a prior presentation, so I don't want to go into it in too much detail here, but when an instrument produces a pitch, it also produces the overtones. We have the analogy of dropping a rock in the pond. The primary fundamental, the big wave, that's what happens in the air when we pluck the string. And then you have the overtones, the smaller waves that have some characteristics to them. So these overtones are higher pitch frequencies that occur in whole number multiples of the fundamental. The strength and presence of each overtone vary by instrument. So that's the thing that's going to distinguish them. Again, we're going to mainly get into the musical concepts and apply them to the instrument that we know best, that being the guitar. But just to get some idea of how these kind of different colors work, and historically, how has this worked? What do we want to do? We want to have an orchestra that has all these different colors together and be able to kind of blend them together. So we have these different instruments. We've got the clarinet, strong, odd numbered harmonics, hollow, woody tone. So this is where it sounds like, are you describing a wine tasting thing, right? Oh, it's a hollow, woody sound, right? Okay. And again, we have to come up with something to describe it because it is different. It's hard to describe it, though. We have a flute. It's got a weak overtone, pure, breathy sound to it, okay? The violin, well, it has a rich in both low and high harmonics, warm and full. Doesn't that sound like a nice red wine or something like that? So they can get a little bit wonky, a little bit, when people start describing their wine, you're like, did you really get that from that? I don't know. I feel like, your terminology's gotten a little bit off, but we have to describe it somehow. So human voice. So emphasizes formants varied by vowel and pitch. Okay, so we have the ADSR. Remember, that's going to be the attack, decay, sustain, release. What is the attack? Time it takes to go from the silence to the peak amplitude. So if you're on a guitar and you pluck the guitar, there's going to be silence, and then it's going to go to some peak. If you were to hit that or show it on a tuner, then that peak might be a little bit higher than where it's going to sustain at, right? Depending on how the attack was. So then we have the example, a piano has fast, bowed instrument is more gradual. So then we have the decay, time from peak to sustain level. So if you pluck the string on the guitar, it might peak higher than the actual tone that it's going to sustain on if you were to show that on a tuner, for example. So example, precision, fast decay, and then percussion has a fast decay, and then we have the sustain, constant level during the note's hold. So if you pluck the string, it's going to peak, and then it's going to basically hold the sustain, which is the easiest place to basically tune it at if you're using an electronic tuner, right? Hopefully it's going to hold on there for a little bit of time. So you have the measure of how long it'll hold on the sustain. So the organ has a long sustain, for example, and then the release. That's the time it takes to return to silence after note is released. So after the note's released, how long does it go back to silence? Example, the guitar is medium, the cymbal is long. Timbre and music practice. Composers and orchestrators use timbre to create contrast and blend between instruments. Now, again, the classical idea of music theory, what are you going to do with timbre? Well, you can imagine that the old, when people were grasping these concepts, they're like, oh my goodness, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all the colors of the music, of the musical rainbow, and I'm going to put them into an orchestra with all these different instruments and allow them to attack it in all these different ways. And I have, and you can imagine, it's almost like the orchestras get bigger and bigger, and now you've got this huge thing that you can do. So that's one way that you can do it. Obviously, today, you have different ways other than possibly simply different instruments, such as the guitar. You've got like the electricness of the guitar now. So not only can I change it by vibrato, attacking the pick differently, and so on and so forth, but now I can alter it in all kinds of ways with just one instrument, right? I can actually plug it in and use different amplifier effects and whatnot and so on. And then I can also put it in the computer and then vary it with the computer, and then I can layer it on top of itself So now I don't need to be playing everything at the same time. I could use sophisticated recording tools to layer it. So you can see how, hopefully this is how the colors, your mindset would change. If I was back in the day before recordings and whatnot, and I was like, dude, I'm going to maximize my color template to paint with, then I would want a massive orchestra, right? That's the way you would do it. But these days you could still do that. That would still be cool to do. But these days you're saying, I have all these other techniques I can do, so I can actually layer and use different colors by using a layered effect. Either putting my own music on top of my own music, building the layers that way, and I can actually change the layers of the music. You can actually say, well, there's within software, right? So I can actually make a layered guitar sound from just electronic stuff that actually still sounds like a guitar because I put the harmonic series that's for the guitar within it and then layer that on other things, right? So you can see the way the concept of how you're going to apply the colors of music has changed to some degree with technology in any case. So establish mood, dark, bright, warm, highlight melody, or create background texture. So arrangers consider timbre to avoid clashes or muddy textures. So if you get really kind of wonky in it, you might start saying, well, look, the overtone that I have right here is in the same key. It matches this other thing that I'm playing, but the way the overtones are matching out, maybe there's still a clash, right, in the overtone from the other. So you can get a little bit more wonky on the technical side of things to see if anything is making sure everything is mixing up together. And again, technology these days would allow you to actually remove just electronically, some of those things if you wanted to do that way. So electronic music leverages timbre shaping through synths and filters. So timbre and perception. So timbre affects emotional response, bright, brassy, bold, and triumphant versus soft, breathy, intimate, or sorrowful. So it also plays a role in voice recognition and instrument identification. So let's give a quick recap of the things that we have that we can play with so that we have our practical playing and what things can we vary within it. Timbre versus other sound qualities. We've got the pitch. Is it high-low? That's going to give us the frequency. In essence, the notes that we're playing are clearly the first thing that comes to mind when you're playing an instrument, and you can vary the notes that you play. The loudness. Clearly, the loudness is going to have a big implication. Even if you're just playing the same note, but you play it louder or softer, possibly faster or slower in tempo. And then we've got the timbre, which is going to be the quality or color, the harmonic content envelop. And that is something like on the guitar, which again, you can multiple or play or vary with almost an infinite waves, right? So we'll talk more about that later, but you could do hammer-ons, you could do pull-offs, you can bend, you can slide, you can pluck with a pick, you can pluck with your fingernail, you can pluck with your finger without your fingernail, and then you can get into an amplifier, which adds an infinite amount of variation, and then you can not only plug it into an amplifier, but amplifier or not amplifier, and put it into a computer, and then change the timbre with the computer.